When I saw the new sign above my father's old shop, Sarah's Essentials, I felt my knees weaken. The same shop that once carried our family name for 3 generations, now carried hers. My daughter-in-law stood proudly at the entrance, a clipboard in her hand, giving orders to the workers as if she'd built the place from the ground up. The shelves were rearranged, the old wooden counter was replaced with glass, and the familiar scent of my father's handmade oils, jasmine, sandalwood, rose, was drowned under synthetic perfumes that smelled like plastic and greed. I stood there on the pavement, clutching my handbag, unable to move. People walked past me, unaware that this used to be my life, my heart, my inheritance. That shop was my father's legacy, and mine after him. I never imagined the person who would take it away would be the very woman who once called me Mama. Before all this, before the betrayal and the lawsuits and the sleepless nights, life was simple. Not perfect, but simple. My father, Ahmad, was a man of habit and humility. He ran his small perfumery shop for nearly 40 years in the same street of Karachi, old city, narrow alleys, the sound of scooters and vendors shouting prices all day long. The signboard above our shop read Ahmad and Daughters. He insisted on adding and daughters, the year I turned 16, and began helping him after school. I used to laugh and tease him, saying, "Abba, people will think you have a business empire." He'd wink and reply, "You're my empire, beta." After his passing, that shop became my comfort and my purpose. My husband, Rashid, had died a few years before, leaving me a widow at 48. My son, Ali, was finishing university then, bright-eyed and full of dreams, but not the kind that included the old perfumery. He'd say, "Amy, you should sell the shop. Move to a quieter area, rest a little." But I couldn't. Every cent in that store carried my father's fingerprints. So I stayed. I opened the shop every morning at 9 o'clock, swept the front steps, lit a little incense, and arranged the bottles the way Abba used to. My loyal customers would stop by, not just to buy oil or soap, but to talk about their children, their worries, their memories. That little shop wasn't just business. It was community. Ali got married 2 years later to a girl named Sarah. She was different. Sharp, ambitious, always polished. The kind of girl who walked into a room and immediately started organizing it in her head. I liked her at first. Her confidence reminded me of my younger self. She said she wanted to learn about the family business, maybe help modernize it a little. I thought it was sweet. I even told her stories about how my father blended oils by hand, how each fragrance had meaning. I showed her the ledger, the supplier's notes, and the old brass scale my father had used since the 1970s. She listened, but her eyes kept darting to the sales figures. At first, I was happy for her interest. Every morning, she'd come early to the shop, her hair tied neatly, notebook in hand. She started labeling bottles, rearranging the shelves, even making social media posts. I didn't understand much about that world, but she seemed to. Orders started coming in online, and younger customers began visiting. I thanked her often. "Beta, you've brought new life to this place," I told her once. She smiled politely. "Someone has to move it into the 21st century, Mama." Her tone was respectful, but a little sharp underneath. I ignored it. Then one day, she asked for access to the bank account. "For inventory and payments," she explained. "It'll make things faster." I hesitated, but Ali encouraged me. "Amy, she's helping. You don't need to worry about those small details now." So I signed. After that, small things began to change. The shop's receipts no longer carried the old name, Ahmad and Daughters. The bottles started arriving with a new printed label, elegant cursive letters that read, "Essence by Sarah." When I pointed it out, she said lightly, "Oh, it's just branding. Younger customers prefer a modern look. Don't worry, the heritage is still there." But when one of my father's old customers, an elderly man who'd been coming for 30 years, asked me, "Beatty, what happened to Ahmad and Daughters?" Something inside me twisted. I looked around the shop and saw fewer traces of my father's touch. His photo had been moved from the counter to a side wall. The glass jars I used for blending oils were gone, replaced by factory-made bottles. And when I mentioned it to Sarah, she said, "Oh, they were taking too much space. I stored them." Stored. That was the word she used for my father's memories. Still, I told myself not to overthink. Maybe it was just the times changing. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being sentimental. But that uneasy feeling kept growing, especially when I noticed that she'd stopped calling it our shop. She started saying my business. One morning, I reached the shop a bit earlier than usual. The shutters were half open. Inside, I saw Sarah with two men in suits holding documents. They were discussing something quietly, their heads close together. I waited until they left, then walked in. Sarah, who were they? I asked. Oh, just some investors, she said casually, without looking up from her phone. Investors? For what? For expansion, she replied. We're planning to open another branch in the mall. I felt the blood drain from my face. She sighed and finally looked at me. Mama, please don't be upset. It's time to grow. The old model doesn't work anymore. We need to modernize, and to do that I need full creative control. Full control. I repeated softly. It's your father-in-law's legacy, your husband's heritage. You can't just. Mama, she interrupted. With all respect, this business wasn't going anywhere until I stepped in. You should be grateful it's even surviving. Her words cut deeper than I expected. That evening, I checked the business registration documents, something I'd never done before. Ollie had signed over majority ownership to her 6 months earlier, for management convenience. My name wasn't on it anymore. My father's shop was legally hers. I sat on my bed that night, holding the old ledger in my hands, the one with my father's handwriting, pages smelling faintly of rose oil and thyme. My tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. I realized that I hadn't just lost a shop. I'd lost my family's name. The next few weeks felt like I was living in someone else's life. I still went to the shop every morning, out of habit more than purpose, but everything felt different. The shelves gleamed with new labels I hadn't approved, the scent in the air was sterile, and even the customers spoke differently. They didn't ask for Amma's blend or Ahmed's rose oil anymore. They wanted Sarah's signature scents. One afternoon, as I was refilling a bottle for an old customer, Sarah appeared at my shoulder. Her voice was low businesslike. Mama, can I talk to you in private? I followed her into the small back room, where my father's old stool and blending table once stood. It was empty now, bare walls, a printer, a desk. She closed the door. I've been meaning to discuss this for a while, she said. I think it's time you take some rest. Rest? I repeated. Yes, she continued smoothly. You've worked so hard all these years. You deserve peace, Mama. I can handle things now. I stared at her, trying to understand. You mean stop coming to the shop? She nodded, smiling faintly. Just for a while. You can still be part of the brand as a legacy figure. Maybe we'll put your picture on the website, a little story about the founding family. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed the air out of me. My picture? I whispered. You think I'm dead already? Her expression didn't change. Mama, please don't be emotional. This is how business works now. I wanted to shout, to remind her whose sweat and love had built those walls. But all I could do was stand there, shaking, staring at the girl who had married my son and turned my life's work into her brand. I left early that day. When I got home, Ollie was in the living room, scrolling through his phone. Ollie, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sarah wants me to stop coming to the shop. He looked up briefly. Maybe it's for the best, Amy. You've been working too hard. Working too hard. I laughed bitterly. That shop was my life. Your Nana built it. Amy, he interrupted, his tone suddenly firm. Sarah knows what she's doing. She's growing the business. You should trust her. I looked at him, my only son, and for the first time, I realized he wasn't on my side. I stopped going to the shop after that. Not because I agreed, but because every corner of it reminded me of what I'd lost. I stayed home, cleaning the same kitchen shelves, watering the same plants, moving through silence. But inside, I couldn't rest. A few weeks later, I went to visit the shop quietly, just to see it from a distance. That's when I saw the new sign being installed, Sarah's Essentials. My father's name was gone completely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my old chest and took out the file where my father kept every document: ownership papers, land lease, trade license. I started reading carefully. And there it was, my name. I wasn't just an employee. My father had registered the business under both our names before he died. My name was still listed on the original registration as co-owner. A plan began to form in my mind. The next morning, I went to the registrar's office. The man behind the counter recognized me. "Ah, Madame Farah. It's been years since I saw you." I showed him the documents. "Can you tell me if this business registration is still valid?" He flipped through his computer and frowned. It seems a transfer was made last year, to Sarah Ali." "How?" I asked quietly. He hesitated, then said, "There's a signature here, yours." I stared at the paper. The signature was close, almost perfect, but not mine. Sarah had forged it. I thanked the man, my heart pounding. When I stepped outside, the afternoon heat hit my face like a wave. I stood there on the roadside, clutching the paper, realizing just how deep her betrayal ran. She hadn't just taken control, she'd taken ownership. That evening, I went home and waited for Ali. When he arrived, I placed the papers in front of him. "Ali," I said quietly, "did you know about this?" He frowned. "About what?" "About Sarah transferring the business into her name, with a fake signature." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Amy, please don't start this again. Sarah said you gave her permission." "I never did." I raised my voice slightly for the first time. "Do you think I would hand over your Nana's life's work to someone else?" Ali looked torn, but not guilty. Just tired. "Maybe you forgot, Amy. You're always emotional about these things." My heart sank. That's when I knew. He wasn't going to fight for me. The next morning, I went to see a lawyer. A kind man named Mr. Raymond, who had been one of my father's old customers. He listened patiently as I told him everything. He examined the papers and said, "You have a case, Farah Sahiba. The forgery is clear. But pursuing this legally will take time. Are you ready for that?" I nodded. "I've lost too much already. I can't lose my father's name too." We filed the case quietly. Sarah didn't know, not yet. But the tension at home grew unbearable. She'd stopped calling me Mama. Now it was Farah G. Ali avoided me, coming home late, pretending not to notice the silence between us. One night, I overheard them arguing in their room. Sarah's voice was cold. "If your mother keeps interfering, I'll take this business and go my own way." And Ali said nothing. Weeks passed. The court process began. I kept going to hearings, clutching my father's old file, praying quietly before each session. Sarah and her lawyer sat across from me, calm, confident. She wore a beige suit and that same polite smile she'd always used. When the judge asked her about the forged signature, she said sweetly, "Maybe Mama signed it and forgot. She's been under stress lately." Her words burned. But I stayed silent. After that session, as I was leaving the courthouse, she followed me outside. "Mama," she said softly, "why are you doing this? You'll only embarrass yourself. People will think you're jealous." I turned to her, finally looking her straight in the eyes. "I'm not jealous, Sarah. I'm disappointed. You could have built your own business. You didn't need to steal mine." She gave a small, dismissive laugh. "The world doesn't wait for sentiment, Mama. You should have learned that." And with that, she walked away, heels clicking on the marble floor, while I stood there, watching the woman who'd destroyed my peace without even blinking. But I also knew something she didn't. The truth had a way of finding its voice, even if whispered. And mine was just beginning to speak. The day of the final hearing felt heavy, as if the air itself was waiting for truth to rise. I wore my father's old shawl, faded, smelling faintly of attar, and carried his ledger with me, the one Sarah had once called outdated. The courtroom was small, crowded, and tense. Sarah sat with her lawyer, perfectly composed, her eyes avoiding mine. Ali sat beside her, his expression blank, but I noticed his leg bouncing under the table. He was nervous. Mr. Raymond presented our evidence calmly. The original business registration, my father's signed will, and the analysis proving that my signature on the transfer papers had been forged. When the handwriting expert testified, Sarah's face didn't move. But Ollie shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The judge turned to her and asked, "Mrs. Sarah Ollie, did you forge this signature?" She smiled faintly. "No, Your Honor. I only handled the paperwork Ollie gave me." Ollie's head snapped toward her. "What?" he whispered. But she kept her gaze on the judge. "My husband said his mother approved. I trusted him." The entire courtroom went silent. For a moment I thought I'd misheard, but the shock on Ollie's face confirmed it. She had turned the blame toward him. He looked at her, stunned. "Sarah, that's not true." She gave a cool shrug. "Well, someone had to." That was the moment something in Ollie broke. I could see it in his eyes. The realization that his wife's ambition had no loyalty, not even to him. The judge adjourned briefly. Outside in the corridor, Ollie approached me. For the first time in months, he looked like my little boy again, confused, small, ashamed. "Amy," he said, his voice trembling. "I swear I didn't know she did this." I looked at him for a long time. I wanted to hug him, to tell him it was all right. But the wound was too deep. "All you had to do," I said quietly, "was believe me when I told you something was wrong." He lowered his head. "I was blind. She made me think you were holding us back." "She didn't just take a shop, Ollie," I said. "She took your family's name. And you helped her do it." He began to cry, silently, quickly wiping his eyes when people passed by. When we went back into the courtroom, his seat next to Sarah was empty. He sat behind me instead. When the final verdict came, it felt both like a victory and a loss. The judge ruled in my favor. The forged signature invalidated the ownership transfer. The business would revert to its original registration, Ahmad and Daughters. Sarah was ordered to return all profits earned under her name, pending a full audit. The judge's final words echoed in the room. Family legacy is not a commodity to be traded under deceit. I sat there, my hands trembling, as Mr. Raymond smiled quietly. But when I turned toward Sarah, expecting anger or shame, I saw neither. Her expression was empty, like a chess player who had lost a match but was already thinking about the next game. Outside, reporters and neighbors whispered, "That's the woman who took her mother-in-law's shop," someone said. "Unbelievable." Sarah ignored them all. She walked past me without a glance, heels clicking against the marble floor, just as she had the day she confronted me months ago. Ollie followed her out, calling her name softly, but she didn't respond. And for the first time, he didn't chase her. The shop was returned to me a week later. When I unlocked the shutters that morning, the sunlight poured inside, revealing shelves that were still filled with her products. Her posters, her brand labels, all of it. It didn't feel like home anymore. I stood there quietly, breathing in the faint mix of jasmine and chemical perfume, and whispered, "We're back, Abba. But it's not the same." Over the next few weeks, I worked to restore it, little by little. I brought back the brass scale, the handwritten labels, the old jars. I rehired Rashid, our longtime helper, who had left when Sarah replaced him with young salesmen. Customers began returning slowly. Older women smiled when they saw the old name again, Ahmad and Daughters. Some even hugged me, saying, "It's good to have the real shop back." But deep down, something in me had changed. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet sadness. A knowing that even when you win, betrayal leaves stains that no court can clean. Ollie came by often after that. He helped around the shop sometimes, sweeping the floor, fixing things. He told me Sarah had moved out, gone to stay with her parents. He looked hollow. One evening, as I was closing the shop, he said softly, "Amy, I want to apologize. I let her come between us." I turned to him, touched his face gently. "You made a mistake, Beta. But so did I. I trusted someone too easily because I wanted peace." He nodded, eyes down. "She says I ruined her life. But maybe she ruined her own." I sighed. "Ambition isn't evil, Ollie. But greed that forgets its roots, that's poison." He stayed silent for a while, then said, "What will you do now?" I looked around the shop, the bottles, the scents, the soft hum of the fan, and smiled faintly. "I'll keep it small, honest, the way it was meant to be." News of the case spread through the community. Some people judged Sarah harshly, others pitied her. But I didn't speak against her, not once. When people asked how I felt, I simply said. She forgot what family means. I hope one day she remembers. I learned that she tried to open her own store under a new name, but things didn't go well. Suppliers refused to work with her. Customers didn't trust her anymore. Eventually, she closed it down. I should have felt satisfaction. But instead, I felt something else, grief. Because no matter what she did, she had once called me Mama. And that word still echoed somewhere deep in my heart, heavy with what could have been. That night, as I sat on the shop's old wooden stool, I lit incense and watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling. The same stool where my father used to sit, blending oils with slow, patient hands. I whispered, "Abba, it's still yours. I promise it will always be yours." The bell above the door jingled softly as a young girl entered, smiling shyly. "Are you the owner?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes, Beta. I am." Months passed, and life slowly began to settle again. The court battles, the whispers, the humiliation, they all faded into background noise. What remained was quiet, peaceful even. The shop once again became what it had always been. A small, humble place filled with stories and scents. Every morning, I opened the shutters, swept the front, and lit a stick of incense. The same way my father taught me. But something inside me had shifted. I no longer saw the shop as my duty or inheritance. It was my memory, my connection to the people who had built me. Ollie began helping me more, genuinely helping, not just visiting out of guilt. He started learning how to blend oils, asking questions the way I once had asked my father. I watched him with quiet pride one afternoon as he carefully measured a few drops of rose essence into a vial. "You'll make a good perfumer someday," I told him. He looked up and smiled faintly. "Maybe, but no one will ever match you, Amy." I laughed softly. "Don't try to match me, Beta. Just carry the heart of it. That's what matters." He nodded, and for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Humility. Growth. The kind that comes after losing something that once felt certain. One evening, just before Maghrib, I stepped outside to close the shop. That's when I saw her, Sarah, standing across the street. She looked thinner, tired. There were no bodyguards, no cars, no designer clothes this time. Just her, holding a small plastic bag, eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. Our eyes met. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy with everything that had been said, and everything that hadn't. Finally, she crossed the street and stopped a few feet away. "Mama," she began, her voice quiet, hesitant. "I came to say I'm sorry." My chest tightened. "I didn't come for forgiveness," she continued. I wanted you to know that I was wrong. I thought I could build something better, but all I did was destroy what was already beautiful." Her voice trembled. "I lost Ollie. I lost everything. I just wanted you to be proud of me." I looked at her. This young woman who had once been part of my family, who had sat in my kitchen drinking tea and calling me Mama. And though my heart still bore scars, I couldn't hate her. I took a breath. "Sarah," I said softly, "you wanted to grow fast. But some things can't be rushed. Respect, trust, legacy, they take time. Just like perfume." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm not asking to come back," she whispered. "I just needed to say it." I stepped forward, touched her arm gently and said, "Then say it, and let it go." She looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "Thank you." And with that she turned and walked away. No drama, no goodbye, just silence. I stood there until she disappeared into the crowd. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt release. It's been 2 years since then. The shop still stands, smaller than it once was, but stronger in its truth. Ollie runs most of it now. I sit in the corner sometimes, blending a little rose oil just for myself. The scent always takes me back. To my father, to the old stool, to the time when all we needed to survive was love and honesty. I've learned something through all this. You can rebuild a business. You can reclaim a name. But once trust is broken, the only way to heal is through forgiveness. Not for them, but for yourself. When I think of Sarah now, I don't think of betrayal. I think of lessons, hard, necessary ones. Sometimes life teaches us through loss. Sometimes it strips away everything we think we own, to remind us what truly belongs to us. And what belongs to me, what no one can ever take, is the scent of my father's legacy, lingering quietly in the air every time I open that shop door. I look into the camera of my heart now, speaking to you, the listener, the witness, and I want to ask, if someone you love took everything from you, your name, your work, your peace, would you fight to take it back? Or would you let time bring justice on its own? Tell me what your heart says in the comments. And if my story touched you, stay a while. Because every scent, every memory, and every scar has its own story, waiting to be told.